You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 138, How to Stop Your Clients from Trampling Your Boundaries. If you're a business owner who wants actionable solutions to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm looking forward to bringing this episode to you because you get to meet our guest, Melissa Morris. Melissa is a business operations consultant who specializes in client processes, which includes client onboarding, management, and offboarding. She uses her 10 years of client management experience to help service-based business owners streamline and automate these processes, as well as teach them how to set client expectations and create and hold boundaries. She frees business owners from the overwhelm so they can actually work on their business and not just in their business. Look, I know that holding boundaries, creating boundaries, communicating boundaries with clients can be incredibly overwhelming. And at times, you probably don't even know what your own boundaries are to communicate them. But I bet you sure do know when they've been trampled on. So stay tuned to find out how to define your boundaries, communicate your boundaries, and hold your boundaries while still making them happy clients. Hey, Melissa. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, well, I'm pretty excited too because I gotta be honest, I get a lot of people pitch me to be a guest on the Productivity Straight Talk. And when your topic came through my email and it was so thoroughly thought out and it was so on target with what I know my audience needs to hear, I was excited to jump on a call with you to kind of flesh this topic out for the listeners of Productivity Straight Talk. So they're in for a treat today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to share this info with them.
Yes, absolutely. So today we're talking about boundaries, but we've talked a lot about boundaries on Productivity Straight Talk. But what we haven't spoken about in detail is boundaries with our clients. You know, that is like one of the most pushed up against boundaries I think we have as business owners. So
yes, especially the done-for-you service provider.
Yes, right, exactly. And even done for you, but also like communicating. Like it could run the spectrum of if you have client interaction, we know that when expectations aren't set, you don't know what to expect, they don't know what to expect, and it becomes a mess and a pull for all your time and attention.
Exactly.
So let's start off with talking about how you define boundaries and how that is, in the world of client boundaries. I'll let you share with us a little bit about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so I actually too love that you asked what are boundaries, because I think that is almost starting to become a bit of a buzzword and get thrown around a bit of like, I have boundaries and I hold your boundaries if someone's talking about a difficult client situation. And so absolutely, the first thing you need to do when you're deciding how you're going to hold your boundaries, you need to know what your boundaries are.
Right. And before you feel taken advantage of.
Exactly.
Ideally, yes.
Exactly. It's hard to know if your boundaries are being trampled if you're not even sure what that looks like. And what is a hard boundary for someone else may not even be that big of a deal for you. That may not be an issue in your life, in your business. You have to meet your clients where they're at, but you also need to be, operating from a space that feels really good for yourself. So oftentimes the questions I get surrounding boundaries are definitely email, like response time.
Mm-hmm.
So preferred methods of communication is always a big thing. How do we want our clients getting in touch with us? Is that via email? Do we want them on Slack? Do we want them notifying us on our team Trello board? What exactly is that? And knowing for yourself that this is the best way, the way that you want them getting in touch with you. And then also the second boundary that is really, really important. So One is communication. The second big one is the deliverables that you're providing for your project. What is included and what is not included in your project, because this will get you in trouble a lot of times, because you're going to find yourself in the midst of scope creep, where you're doing a lot of work for free and then you're having to come back and say, oh, that's not included, which is often a pretty uncomfortable situation. So I say those specific examples to get to your boundaries are really, what are the places where you feel comfortable working with your client, right? What are you willing to do? What is considered your standard for customer service? What is considered above and beyond for customer service, which you're willing to do for certain clients or under certain circumstances? And then what is a non-negotiable? Like, I am not willing to do that for my clients.
Yeah. Okay. So we can admittedly say that having those conversations as they're happening can feel very, very difficult, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
For one, we want to do a good job. We want our clients and customers to be happy with us. But two, in my experience, I have seen a lot of like a shame storm that happens. Like, oh, I should have done this, or maybe I didn't do that right. Or, well, if they're asking for it, they're not going to be happy if I say no. Or like, it's just, and then we get into a spiral of like our own self stories, and it becomes a very emotional experience where now you feel at odds with your client. And that's not what we want.
No. Exactly. And so what happens is when our boundaries are getting trampled, we're feeling like our boundaries are getting encroached on, it's almost always because there has been an unmet expectation from our client. So there has been a breakdown in communication and what is expected to happen during the work process. So the best way to deal with boundary issues is to prevent them from ever happening to begin with. That's really the easiest solution. I will put a caveat on that. It is your business. It is your service offering. You should always feel empowered if someone comes to you and says, hey, can you do this too? To stand there and say, no, that's actually not included. Right. You are allowed to do that. But I do understand what an uncomfortable conversation that can be when you're talking with clients. So to get ourselves out from having to have those conversations, not get engaged in those emails and those moments, is to set really clear expectations right up front. So I encourage the business owners I work with to set 4 expectations with their clients, and you're going to want to do this during client onboarding. You're going to want to let them know your process overview and deliverables. What does working with you actually look like? What can they kind of expect during this process? An example I like to give is, let's say you're a web designer and maybe up front you're going to do a lot of talk about design and colors and all that fun stuff, right? And so you're often high touch with your client at that point. But then now that web designer has to go back behind the scenes and do the building and the coding and all those nuts and bolts of the website. And they may now, quote unquote, disappear for 2 or 3 weeks. Now, I'm the client, and for the first couple of weeks of our relationship, I've been feeling very high touch with you. I'm getting lots of feedback from you. And now I'm thinking, where did you go? I haven't talked to you in 3 weeks.
Because that's their perspective.
Because that's their perspective is now you are just not even paying attention to my project. Now it happens. Now I'm going to send you an email. Hey, where are we at on that? Hey, did you get those images? Just wondering when I can expect a proof. That's where we start getting all of these emails. And then what do we do as a service provider? We start to panic and think, oh, well, they're rushing me. They want me to get this done right away. We start this shame spiral of, oh, they're expecting it to be done and I really need more time. And then we get ourselves in this situation. Whereas if right up front during onboarding, we'd have let this client know the process overview and deliverables. Hey, so for the first couple of weeks, we're really going to be talking a lot. We're going to have several meetings, but then we're going to go a couple of weeks. And this is where I'm really digging in. I'm really getting focused on your work. And you'll hear from me after I've had an opportunity to put these bits and pieces together.
Yes.
Cool. Now your client's not left for 2 or 3 weeks saying, hey, are you working on my stuff?
Right.
Like they're excited. They're like, cool. She's getting my work done right now. Right.
Right.
So that process overview and deliverables is really, really important. Let them know what to expect there. Meeting details. How often are you going to be having calls? What do those calls look like? This is really important for a couple of reasons. We all hate meetings, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to have meetings for the sake of meetings. But well-timed and useful meetings where everybody knows what's going to happen on that call, you can get a lot of stuff done. Mm-hmm. And this is what we don't want to happen. We don't want everybody to block off an hour on their calendar. We show up for the meeting and you say, okay, hey, during this call, we're going to really dig into your social media. And I really want to look at your Google Analytics. Can you pull those analytics up for me? And your client goes, I don't know how to access that. I don't know what to do.
Right.
Cool. Well, we've all blocked off 60 minutes to sit here and talk about that. And now we can't. So then what's end up happening is we feel bad about like closing the meeting down. So then we're like, well, and we spend, the next 45 minutes talking about like this high level fluff, and we've ultimately wasted everybody's time.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So that's number 2, right?
Yes. Number 2 are your meeting details.
So I'll let you go through all 4 and then I want to unpack them.
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
So that'll be number 2. Number 3 is going to be your preferred methods of communication. I started touching on this a little bit when we first started talking. How do you want to be reached? Mm-hmm. This is going to really cut down on repeated emails where you're getting Voxer messages and Facebook messages and Slack notifications. You can't keep track of what's going on.
Yeah. Not just when is appropriate.
When is
office
appropriate.
hours. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then your last one is going to be what you need from them. So this can even be things like showing up on time for meetings, being prepared, getting me information I need, but also get specific about some of the big things in terms of, I'm going to need all your passwords and logins by our kickoff call. I will need to have everybody's staff bio and headshot before our strategy session. Mm-hmm. Even some of those type of things are really, really useful to let them know up front, because it may take some time for them to get that information. And again, we don't want to say, our call is in a couple of days. I need everyone's headshot and bio. Oh, well, we're hiring a new employee. They're starting next week. I'm not going to have their headshot, or so-and-so's on maternity leave and can't get me XYZ. I need more time. Right. Boom. Now there's this big problem.
Right.
Big stall out in the project.
Yeah.
Right. Which massively affects your workflow.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So let's break them down. So number 1 is communicating scope of work. Right?
Yep. Process of review and deliverables.
So how do you recommend that someone explains that or shares that with a new client as they're coming on?
So oftentimes I work with people and they have included parts of this in their contract, but I really like that piece to be pulled out.
I love that, because who reads the contracts? Well, you better, but they don't.
Amen. Right?
Yes.
And that's exactly right. And you probably they say, I talked about this on the discovery call. Okay, cool. But your client's mindset was in a much different space during that discovery call. They're really thinking about the know, like, and trust. Is this the solution to my problem? Is this where I want to dedicate my funds, resources, my time and energy? They're less concerned at that point about the very specific details.
Right.
They're going to ask the high level, but the details will come later.
Right. Okay. So, and I love this because in my own business, I think about it as it's such an overwhelming experience when you're on a discovery call or when you get a new client at first, right? And for them, they're overwhelmed and there's a lot of information. You're trying to share how you work with them, and maybe it's all verbal. This is another thing. So you're sharing it all verbal. Maybe you're on a call or a Zoom meeting, but not everyone's verbal. They need to read it. Right. And so I like the idea of, it does need to be in the contract, like you said, but breaking it down into what I call next steps. So like on the call, it's like overarching bigger vision, like overarching process. And then would you say then you break it down into like, this is just what they need to know for next steps to kind of handhold them through the process?
So what I like to do is, yes, you will talk about that on the discovery call, and exactly that is part of the next steps. So when you end the discovery call, typically a lot of people I work with at least are ending that discovery call with a yes or a no or a let me think about it.
Of course, yes.
Mm-hmm. So when we get those yeses, we want to send them a proposal, a contract, and invoice. Now I use the proposal piece not in the way maybe more traditional way of thinking about a proposal where I'm talking about these higher level things. My proposals are short and sweet, and this is what you get. These are the deliverables, because I don't want that hidden anywhere. I want it very clear what is expected, and they have to submit. They have to say, I have looked at this. I agree to this proposal. This is what I want. Now we just get into the contract. This is the legal stuff to protect us. We sign off, and then we roll into the invoice where they can be giving a deposit, payments, all that good stuff. And like we talked about, yes, we want it written down, because not only is there so much going on during that phone call, are we honestly going to forget to mention something?
Yeah.
Are they not going to hear it? Are they going to forget? Are they going to hear incorrectly? Like, we know his version, her version, and the truth, right? Like that old saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's so much going on. It's completely possible for a very innocent, oh, that's not what I thought I was getting. Well, now we really have this hard document to refer back to. And then again, later when we're feeling like our boundaries are being trampled, scope creep is coming into play, it's much simpler to say, please look back over our proposal. You can see this is what's included. You can even include a notation on your proposal. Items outside of this will incur an additional fee. Please request a quote. Even start warming them up to the idea that other things are available. It might cost extra to get something done. There's freedom to ask. So there's language you can incorporate there also. But nonetheless, we can come back to a very hard written piece of paper that says this is what is included.
Yes. Okay. I love that for a lot of reasons. And then just because we have listeners listening, I think I fast forwarded when I was talking about next steps. So we'll circle back to that. It was in the wrong category. So what you're saying is that you can then gracefully remind them of what they signed. A reminder is so much easier in my experience than they're hearing for the first time that could possibly be an additional charge, or having to abruptly say something like that. I love the idea of saying, okay, so based on our agreement, that seems to be outside of the project, and I can do that for X, Y, and Z. Would you like a proposal? Or maybe you don't say X, Y, Z, you say, would you like an additional proposal?
Yes,
and then they get to say yes or no.
Exactly. It just feels like it's coming from such a different space, and it just feels so much better than, oh, by the way, that's extra.
Yes, yes. You know, one of the things that I think may come up for people on why that feels difficult is maybe they are not like into the process. Like they have a process, but to sit down and write it all out and to be so detailed as this is the scope of work, that may seem overwhelming. And I want you to know that we're talking about this because while it may be overwhelming, it is so crucial, because the next time someone asks you to do something that's out of the scope of work and you have it written, now it's a billable hour. I have clients that tell me they have hours and hours and hours every single week that they have to write off because it was in the gray area and they don't want to ruffle any feathers. And so this one project of getting it all written out into a proposal or scope of work will actually make you money.
And I'm so glad you started talking about that, because absolutely, yes. And not only does this protect you from scope creep, it does make you take a hard look at what's really included. And then it protects you from yourself because as high achievers, and if any of you out there are people pleasers, you naturally start to want to go above and beyond and do the extra. And there could be some imposter syndrome going on of feeling like, well, this isn't enough for this new price point that I'm putting out there, or this new offer that I'm doing. This isn't enough. So I'm going to do these couple things too. And I'm going to do this too. And this is just a great framework. If you have those deliverables down, you can't trample over your boundaries, and your client can't either.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking of when I had my branding done, and the person that I had hired had an incredible proposal and calendar. And this is when this is expected from me. This is expected from you. And I remember experiencing that. It was a couple years ago. And I remember experiencing it with such calmness as the client, such confidence in her work. So there's so many other added benefits other than, just creating the boundaries, but really it's the experience the client's feeling, because they feel like, okay, I know exactly what I paid for. I know exactly what it is that I'm expecting. And it seems like you know what you're doing when it's presented that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think sometimes service providers or business owners get in a space where they think excellent customer service is doing everything the customer asks or being completely available to them. And that's actually not the truth.
Yeah.
What is a better experience for your client is just like that branding experience that you had. You thought, oh man, this person really knows what they're doing. They've done this a ton of times. They've got this super locked up. I'm not fearful that what I think is going to be included is suddenly not included. I know exactly what I'm going to get for this investment. And you go into it with a big sigh of relief versus lots of questions.
Right.
And what do lots of questions mean?
Right.
Lots of emails and lots of texts and lots of Voxers.
Right. Which is what's number two? Number two. Let's go back to number two.
Yeah. So our preferred methods of communication.
Exactly. Okay. So I love that one. Because if you haven't thought about this, one of the things that you had said was, if you don't know your boundaries, how do you know if they're being stepped on? And certainly the client's not going to. So this is really a time management productivity issue, right? Is if you have incoming information coming in from Facebook messengers and Boxer and Slack and the Trello board and maybe ClickUp and definitely in your email, because we have a lot of people that just want to do email, and then maybe they're texting you, like literally this list doesn't end, right? That's exhausting. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, that's the reality for a lot of business owners, is that information is flooding in all the places. And so communicating the way in which you want to be communicated with takes you first to decide what works best for your workflow.
Exactly. Where are you managing your tasks? How are you keeping track of your projects? What feels good for you? Start there, and then again, let your client know, because also this is a recipe for stuff to get missed.
Yeah.
Your client's going to send you a Voxer. Can you take a look at X, Y, and Z? I'm having trouble with this. It dings. You're in the grocery store. You're picking up the kids. You listen to it and think, oh, I'll do it later.
Right.
And then life continues to happen, and then it doesn't get done. And then you get an email about it. Where did they tell me about that? Now you're checking back through email. You're checking over here. You're checking over there. Or even if you are good about saying, I'm going to sit down and listen to all my Voxers and check all my Slack messages and check all my emails and check all my notifications and compile all of those tasks and then move them into my
project management,
workflow. Good grief. How much time are you wasting day after day after day doing that versus I know, well, and how hard is that to delegate? You're not going to be able to pay a VA to go through your email, pull out the client tasks and drop them in your project management tool and tag you. That's not going to happen. They're not going to have your phone in your, or you're
right. They're not going to have
a lot of extra money to go and do all of this.
I mean, I would guess it is possible, but who would want to pay a VA all that money just because you're not communicating? Here's the preferred method of communication.
Correct. Yeah.
And then the second part to that was response time, right? Mm-hmm. I think this is crucial. And I'm going to give a different perspective. We often talk about like the client had an expectation of, same day response, right? And you're thinking 1 business day, 24 hours is good in your head. But what I find to be true is that because it wasn't spoken about, the business owner instantly responds. And then that becomes the habit and or the expectation of the client. And it's totally wreaking havoc on their productivity and focus. And so it really could be that the client really wasn't expecting it for a day or whatever, 24 hours or 48 hours. And now you have put on yourself this really rigid response time that now you're like, you look up and you're like, why can't I focus to get my work done?
Yes. Expectations will be set, whether you're doing them intentionally or unintentionally. You are going to set some expectations.
That is so good. Okay, talk to us about that. So we're talking obviously about intentional. So talk to us about what it would look like unintentional.
And you were starting to get on that unintentional where they send us an email and we're very quickly responding back. They ask for a project, we get it back to them within a couple of hours. They send us a message and we're responding at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the morning. Pretty much they're there and we say yes. Now, this could obviously go in the other way where we've set an expectation that we're not going to get back to them for 3 or 4 days, unintentionally or intentionally, but we're going to be far more inclined to unintentionally set this very, very high expectation, this very, very high response time. And we do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves.
We totally do. So then what happens is if you took an afternoon off to go to the kids' holiday party, they're freaking out by the time you're done back in 2 or 3 hours because they're used to always responding quickly and quickly and quickly.
Correct. I have had business owners actually get emails from their clients that say, "Where are you? You haven't responded to my email." It's 11 a.m. and they're talking about an email that they had sent earlier that morning. We're talking about a few hours and they're already saying, "Where are you?" Because they're used to that constant, immediate. And now what has happened is you have given them the luxury of just working on their late timeline and not getting ahead. And now you're catering to their poor time management because they're, "Oh, I forgot I need those graphics. I'm not keeping proper track of that. They'll get it done. I'll just shoot her an email. She'll knock it out in a couple hours."
Right. Okay. All right. Awesome. So we want to be intentional so that we're not creating unintentional expectations that really make us kind of a prisoner to our own business.
Yes, exactly. And you'll be connecting with the right people. I was talking with someone and I even just kind of off the cuff said a response time of 24 hours. And she said, "Whoa, like a week in my book is good. If I get back within a week, that's cool." And the thing is, that's fine. Like if that is your response time, that is A-okay. But if I am a business owner who expects a 24 hours or needs based on the type of business I have or my business needs 24 or 48 hours and the week is how you work, that is so much better to know up front.
Yeah.
Than 3 to 6 months into this just now terrible working relationship. I can identify right away, oh, a week does not feel good to me. That does not work for me.
Right.
And then you and the business owner can say, well, that is the boundary I have set for myself. This probably isn't going to work. Because the truth is you will just drive each other crazy.
Right. And no one will be happy at the end of that relationship.
Exactly. It's not going to end well.
So one of the strategies that I often tell my clients is how to get in front of the communication proactively. And so this might not be an onboarding strategy, but it is a time management and productivity strategy. And that if you are communicating your communication, this works across almost all industries that you have to be high touch with your clients. So imagine an interior designer or a realtor. What I recommend is that you have a specific block of time on your schedule that you're proactively reaching out and giving updates, whether that's via email or whatever form of communication or Slack or phone call that you've agreed to, but that you're proactively scheduling the time to give them an update before they ask for an update. Because now you've been able to batch that into a time that works for you, that you're pushing the information out. What happens is now you're not having to process incoming calls and text messages and all the things and then getting back to them on all of the different clients' timeframes. You're being very purposeful with your schedule and saying, when you onboard a client, so every Friday you can expect an update on your project or on your transaction or on your fill in the blank, whatever industry you are. And then you hold to it. And then if a client's wondering what's the update, they're like, "Oh, I know I'm going to hear from Amber on Friday."
Yes. So I call those the what's on deck email, right?
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Yes. So I love to use those, and you can send them maybe in the earlier of the week. And that's a what's on deck for that week. Maybe this is a Thursday, Friday email. It kind of recaps, tells you what's coming up. That is totally on point. I love that. And it's such a great way to make sure that you are staying high touch with your clients. You're giving them the information they need and you're doing it on your own terms.
Okay, excellent. All right. So let's go deep dive into number 3.
Meeting details.
Okay. All right. Meeting details. Do you recommend telling them how often they're going to have meetings ahead of time, or is that based on project? What do you see happens that works?
Yeah, I think the best approach is to let them know what the meeting rhythm is going to look like. Are you going to meet once a month? Are you going to meet every couple weeks? If you're more of a project-based service provider and maybe you're going to work with someone for 2 months, you're going to want to let them know high level, we're going to have a strategy call. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we're going to have the, for me, it's like we start with a strategy call. 2 or 3 weeks later, you're going to have your training call. So I let them know this is a timeline that you can expect roughly. And the great thing about doing it in that sort of way too, is it's easier to automate if you have a loose timeline. We have this call 2 or 3 weeks later. We have this call 2 or 3 weeks later. This call is going to happen. And you start with giving them the most details about that first upcoming call.
Right. Okay.
We also don't want to bombard them with, these are the 4 calls that we're going to have. Here's all the bullet points that are going to go underneath them, because your client's thinking, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So I like to do that written one where this is the high level. Here are the 3 or 4 calls you're going to expect. This is what you really need to know for the first one.
Right. And I think that's great. So and another way could be if you're the interior designer, you can say in this phase, you can expect this mini meetings. And in this phase, we're behind the scenes, like you were given an example before. So there won't be any meetings until we get to phase 3. So, breaking up the overarching and then telling them what the meetings and kind of interaction should look like, right?
Yes. And I love that you said the word phases, because that is crucial to establishing a solid workflow and being able to build out those expectations for your client. You have to know that the training call happens 3 weeks after the strategy call. If you don't know that, or you've gotten into a situation where it's wildly inconsistent, that's going to be really hard to manage your workflow and really hard to communicate your client when they can expect their product to be delivered.
Yes. Okay. So there was another thing that I wanted to talk about. So another example rather. So for me, coaching. So my one-on-one clients, it's in the agreement that the cancellation or reschedule policy. And so this might tie it all together, is that I often, not often, actually I take that totally back. Every once in a while, it's a reminder that says, unfortunately, you've canceled in less than 24 hours. So per our agreement, this session will not be rescheduled. So that's the reminder aspect back to the contractor agreement. But really, I just wanted to bring up that how do you handle cancellations? How do you handle reschedules? Because there's a lot of people out there that have really poor time management. And maybe that's the lens my world is in, because I know that for sure. But the truth is that if they don't respect your boundaries of time, they won't think twice, because something else is going to come up that's a higher priority. And they won't think twice about, canceling on you last minute. And now your whole workflow and your schedule and everything has a monkey wrench in it, with no repercussions to the client because that hasn't been communicated to.
Yes, that should absolutely be a part of that meeting details. How can I reschedule? What happens if I need to cancel? What do I need to do in these situations? For sure, that needs to be included. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. And so do you find it often a boundary that has high difficulty, about scheduling and rescheduling? In your experience, is that something that service providers see a lot of?
In my experience, the bigger problem is showing up late for meetings and then calls going way over time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's something else. Calls are 45 minutes long. Now, and if you are a person where you find you're having trouble keeping your calls to time, go ahead and put that in your expectations email. Calls are going to be 45 minutes or hour, whatever that looks like. If you still have questions at the conclusion of this call, you are welcome to send me an email with those thoughts and ideas, and then I will get back to you. So we feel better about it, because what can happen is we're in the middle of this conversation. It's coming up on time. We recognize our client still has some questions. And then we're left feeling that if I stop, I've just left them hanging and abandoned them. So let's let them know up front that if we're bumping up against time, they still get that support from you. They're still going to get what they need from you. But unfortunately, at this point, it just needs to move into email or your preferred method of communication.
Okay. Yes. So one of my favorite things to do is to seed the meeting up front. And so you can get on a call and you would say, all right, great. So today we have 45 minutes for our call and we're going to cover X, Y, and Z. Don't let your clients hijack the meeting, which means the responsibility is on you to reset expectations and also come with an agenda. Because when you're coming with a process and agenda, then you're able to, heaven forbid, the client goes left, which happens a lot, right? Like they have this idea and and they just need to get it out. A graceful way to reel it back in would be to say that, well, I'm going to note that for us to talk about at another meeting, or we can table that. I want to make sure we get through the agenda that we had planned today, which is, and you can kind of just recap. Let me tell you, for the business owners that I work with, if a service provider had that language or whomever that they've hired has that language, they're actually appreciative because they know they have a tendency to go all over the place. And so when you come to the table in a very structured way, not only is it beneficial to you and your business, your profitability, but it's, I believe, a service to the client and that they're coming to you as the expert that's going to keep them on task to reach their goals.
I completely agree. And I love, you said that about seating up front, like this is what's going to happen. We're going to be on for 45 minutes. You can even say things like, I'll let you know when we've got about 5 minutes left to make sure 5 or 10 minutes left, we can get that final question in. We're going to take those few minutes to plan our next call. And then we're also seating them a little bit in that expectations email where we're delivering all of these expectations and these 4 expectations we should be setting for them. When we say, if we come to the end of that call and there are lingering questions, you email me. We're letting them know right away that, girlfriend, I'm stopping when time's over, right?
Yes,
like our time has to be our time. And you don't need to feel uncomfortable about that as the service provider. If you have calls, if you have another client call coming up, you're taking away from that next client to give this one extra. That's not even, that's not fair.
Right.
And so even if someone's giving you some pushback on that, I have to respect all of my clients equally, and everybody gets the hour that they paid for. And I can't now be unprepared as I'm moving into my next call because this one has gone way over.
Right.
I think often you won't have to explain this with your clients. If you're setting these expectations, you're getting up front, that's just a good reminder to you as a service provider that you're not leaving this person hanging, you're not abandoning them. No, you just have to make sure there's enough of you available for all of your clients. Right.
Absolutely. And I just want to throw in that it's okay to have that strong boundary, and it's a great practice to practice, even if you don't have another client meeting. That's when I see things going off the rails, because what's after is to do the work. And so if your meetings are running late all day, who's staying up after hours? Who's working, early in the morning? It's you, because your day went off the rails with client meetings.
Exactly. And then again, let's remember, we're either going to intentionally or unintentionally start setting some expectations.
Right. Because next time you want to say, we're coming to a close of our 45-minute meeting, they're going to be like, we did like 90 minutes last time. Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. That time is going to come where you've got another client. You've got to get to the dentist. You've got to get your kids.
Yes.
And they're now shocked. Like, what are you talking about? We always chat for an hour and 15 minutes.
Right. Exactly. All right. So let's deep dive into number 4. Number 4 is
what you need from them. So we kind of touched on this. This can be things as simple as showing up on time for meetings, providing notice, being prepared. And then it can also be those more very specific things. And you're going to want to include very specific things if they're tech heavy. They may take your client some time to go and collect and gather. And you're also going to want to include this if it's going to involve other people. So some of the examples I gave before, like, I'm going to need your hosting information and your domain logins. For a lot of us, that's like, woohoo, I don't know. I may have to go dig this up. Will LastPass tell me? I don't really know. Or if you are going to need other team members involved, give them a heads up, because what's going to happen is you're going to either put them in a bad situation when you let them know right before the call or on the call, I need this.
Right.
Well, I've got to go dig it up. I've got to go find it. I've got to go talk to so-and-so.
Right.
And now you've just put a big hole in the project. Like now we're all waiting, or you've put a big burden on them where the call's tomorrow. And now I have to spend the next however long it's going to take me to figure out my hosting or to hunt down so-and-so's bio or ask them to write one really quick, whatever that starts to look at. Now you're putting your client in a bad position to meet your poor planning and your lack of planning.
Right.
Which we certainly don't want to do. They have paid you and hired you to make their life easier. Don't make their life harder.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. So let's break those into some like real examples. So for example, when I hired the person for rebranding, she had, I will deliver this draft on this date, and you need to make a decision on the logo by this date, right? And so whatever I had 4 or 5 days, I knew that. And the reason was because she ran her business, and it was really lovely. She ran them in phases. And so she knew that she was being highly creative. Like she had a couple clients in phase 1, a couple clients in phase 3, and so if I didn't hit the deadline, now I'm messing up the whole phases in the fact that she couldn't juggle as many clients effectively or efficiently. Another example that I have seen this in is, say, interior design. So you create the deliverable, the client needs to make decisions, and there's so many personalities out there. You've got people that are extremely decisive, you've got other people that are, taking their time and asking all their friends and wanting everybody's input. And then because that wasn't explained, you have now missed the opportunity to hit the deadline, or you're like, no, we still have to hit the deadline. So now you are cramming the time that you're doing your work down to the days that were left after your client has leisurely made decisions. And so I really, really like this, setting expectations of deliverables, but also how long it would take to return those deliverables.
Yes. And there can even be, second, third, and fourth order effects of this. If I'm subcontracting out, maybe the design piece, the coding piece for the website. Now, my clients miss their deadline. This might make me miss my deadline for my contractor. So now it's messed up my workflow. It's messed up the contractor's workflow. And I assure you, you keep putting your contractor, your team member in that sort of situation, you're going to have a very frustrated subcontractor who likely may not want to keep working with you, or is going to start increasing fees or rush charges.
Yeah,
none of these are good. So it goes even beyond just, putting that burden on yourself. It could potentially be affecting other people, other team members too.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So as we wrap this up, I have a few things that I want to make sure we talk about. One is, what is the best way to get started with this, right? Like this could feel extremely overwhelming. If you don't have a process, it hasn't been communicated to, what do you recommend we start with? And then the second topic I just want to make sure we talk about is, even if you have all this and you have that client that is still pushing boundaries, that's their personality. They don't know what boundaries are. They're like, boundaries what? I want to get some of your best tips on that as well. So where would someone start if they really they don't have any onboarding at all?
Honestly, I think the best place to start is with this expectation email where we deliver these 4 items. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice, and you touched on this, we've talked about this, the only way you're going to start to understand those 4 items and what they want is if you do a little bit of work and looking around, what is it that I'm offering? What does feel good to me? What doesn't feel good to me? And getting that expectation email established, set up, and thinking about those parts of your process first. How many meetings do I need to have? Mm-hmm. When do I need to have them? How do I make sure that stays really consistent?
Right.
What platform am I going to use to communicate with my clients?
Right.
Are we just going to do this? Yep. Are we going to do this via email? Am I going to have a Trello board with them? So you need to start you're going to have to answer these questions before you can even create this expectations email. And I have a template too.
You do. Available. That's right. She's got a freebie. So you can start with this template. All right. We're going to tell you all how to get that real soon.
Yes. So I have a little checklist and template available for you. And so you'll see, these are the things that I'm supposed to cover under this category of meeting details. That means I need to take a minute and get clear on that. Right. So if you're really feeling just very confused. Like, I'm just not really sure. And that's okay. That's really okay. If you're like, I'm not really sure how many calls, or I've just been doing calls as needed.
Right.
That's okay. Then I would just challenge you that when you're taking on your next client, or if you've recently taken on, start documenting. This is the call. This is what I was working on. And you can just put it on your Google Calendar, buy some cheap day planner and just write it in there. Like, just a spot where you can keep track of what you were doing and how long it was taking you. Because you do 2 or 3 projects and you're going to say, oh, I actually always have to end up doing a call here. I always forget to ask for their login and password, and I have to go back to them and ask them to get that to me. And you'll start to see some of those common things that keep coming up project after project. So if you're really feeling lost, I would start there. But if you have a pretty good idea, then grab that expectations template and look and see and get it written down. Like, this is what I need.
Yeah, I love that. So I love that it's a template. And also, I just want to say that this is version 1.0. You have permission to revise it. So when you know better and there's more information, I would really love you to consider this as like a living document, is that it can be updated all of the time. Each time you onboard a client, you can tweak it with some more specific examples or, that kind of thing. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it started.
Exactly. Start somewhere. If you don't have all the answers yet, that's okay. But go ahead and get started with something.
Okay, awesome. So where can they get that? So I'm not going to make them wait any longer. And then I'll ask you my next question. Where can they get this checklist and email template?
Yeah, so you'll go to Melissa V. Morris. It's like V as in Victor, melissavmorris.com/checklist.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for providing that to our listeners. Okay, so let's close out, because this sounds like really great, right? Like, okay, I've got this. And honestly, I think that I do a pretty good job of creating expectations, but every once in a while, a client's like, I'm the exception, or I believe they think they're the exception. And so how would you best recommend that we handle those situations where a client is repeatedly pushing against boundaries and expectations that have been communicated?
So the first thing I would do is challenge you to ask yourself if you are holding your boundary. Have you actually reminded them, like explicitly, not in a beat around the bush kind of way? Have you explained to them, are you holding your own boundary as they continue to send you email after email after email? Do you keep just jumping and going ahead because you're feeling anxious about holding your own boundary? Right. So those are definitely the first 2. Have you clearly told them that they are trampling your boundary?
Right. They may not know. You're right.
They really may not know. And sometimes we think, well, I told them in that email. Okay, you very specifically remind them. Yeah. And don't assume that they interpreted your beat around the bush comments that they know. And then, are you holding your own boundary? Despite the fact that you have said, respond to emails within 24 hours, are you still allowing yourself to respond to them when they're emailing you multiple times or into the evening?
Yeah.
Now, if you're saying, no, I'm really holding true to my boundaries and I'm standing firm in that, then I would encourage you to have a conversation with the client.
I'm so glad you said that. I was going to lead that. Like, I'm thinking, this just came up as I was hearing you speak. It's like a reorientation, like coming to the table saying, I really want to make sure you're happy with the services that are being provided. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page with whatever fill in the blank of what boundaries are being, trampled on, communication or deliverables or this or that. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, Melissa, but we can create some really epic stories in our heads about other people.
Yes.
And so, one call could really clear the air. Maybe if they really don't have those expectations and that they're operating from, I just need to get it out of my head. And that's why you're getting all the things. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, like X, Y, Z, fill in the story. So I always think a call to clear the air is a great start.
All the time. And I love to say, ask why, right? And not from a curious place.
Right.
If they keep emailing you in the evenings, just rapid fire emails, have a conversation with them and say, so per our document and our agreement, I don't work in the evenings, and I see that's often the time that you're sending me a lot of emails. Why is that?
Right.
And they'd be like, oh, I'm not expecting you to respond, but that's when I can really crank out. I'm a super night person. I'm massively productive, and I just start going. Just answer them whenever you want.
Right. Exactly.
Like you said, that story, big problem solved, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And I think that it is worth saying here, because I wouldn't be a complete episode if we didn't, is that it is okay to fire a client.
It is.
And I mean, really, that's a complete sentence. It is okay to fire a client. And if you are continually feeling like your boundaries and you've communicated clearly and that you have taken responsibility in conveying it and holding your boundaries, and you're still feeling the anxiety of working with a client, that's not why we got into business.
Exactly. It's just not a good fit.
Right? I mean, many of us left corporate careers or jobs in other places because we couldn't stand our bosses. And then you get into business and realize you have lots of bosses. So choose your bosses carefully. It's a different dynamic, but choose them. And if it's not working, it's completely okay to let them go. If it is affecting other areas of your business or your profitability because you're continually having to babysit or over communicate, you know what? At the end of the day, it's not a fit.
It's not a fit. Yeah. And that might be how that conversation turns.
Right.
Hopefully it's a conversation of, hey, why is this happening? Okay, well, let's resolve that. And there may be a very easy solution that makes both of you really happy and comfortable, and you guys can continue on. But if that is not the case, and this is what they need, and that's not what you're willing to provide, then the conversation may end with, well, okay, then we need to talk about, ending this contract and ending this relationship.
Right. Okay, awesome. So I know that you were very gracious to share a checklist and an email template, but let's just say they do the checklist and they do the email template and they get it out of their head, which they would need anyways, but they don't have someone on their team to actually execute the details of doing an entire onboarding process, or that they don't want to be bothered with all those details. You have a done-for-you service where you help business owners create their A to Z onboarding process, I guess, right?
Yes, I do. So I will work with business owners and this is the most important part, strategically map it out. Lots of people will set up Dubsado for you. You can steal everyone's Trello templates. I'm so sick of seeing that doesn't, if you don't have a higher plan and a higher strategy from what you want, which involves building in all of these expectations, those phases, that accountability. I have a DISCO framework that I work all the clients I work with through, and that happens at the first part. So D, we define, what does your current process look like? We're going to identify redundancies, gaps, drop-offs. S, streamline. Now that we know what we really need and we've gotten rid of all the excess, let's start streamlining it. C, create phases and milestones. That's where your accountability comes from. And then you can O, outsource and delegate. So you have to do that first. Once you have all those pieces, now you know this is what can be automated, this is what can be streamlined, and this is how I make all of this flow together. So we map all that out, we get your automation blueprint together, and then I do actually set up the automation, the workflows, the templates for the business owner.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I asked you that. That's beautiful. Here's the deal. There are so many business owners that are going to listen to this episode and be like, I absolutely know that my life would be better. I know that I will reclaim time if I have an onboarding process. But the idea of strategically mapping it out and then implementing that strategy seems so incredibly daunting. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on here, is because this is a resource that you don't need to wear this hat to as a business owner. If this is not your zone of genius, if you're going to be doing this in lieu of actual revenue generating activities, then this isn't what you need to be doing with your time. But I will say that your business does need it. And it's not just your business. Yes, your business at a higher level, but you personally as the business owner needs this to protect your time. And
Yes.
like I said, to close the loop on the full circle is that I've just seen so many times that billable hours are being written off because of the guilt of having poor systems and poor communication and not setting these expectations. And so that you can bill for every hour that you are working for a client confidently, that is worth having the process and the system of onboarding.
It is. And I've even seen it affect sales because you get on a sales call and your brain's fluttering with, oh, I had this client project starting. I have this. I still have to do this. Well, when can we start? I don't know.
Yeah. And no client wants that to be an uncomfortable situation. Like you don't want to hear that they're not confident in when they're going to start, because then they definitely don't know when they're going to be delivering the deliverable.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. It does affect sales. It does affect profitability for write-off. And then I would say the last thing that this affects is just your well-being and stress. Because if you have your threshold of I can work with X amount of clients, I would say that this process would bump that threshold up. And then, no matter what your threshold is, having an organized process like this of how you work through and work with your clients is going to automatically create more effective and efficiencies that you can take on more clients without being more stressed.
Yes, I've had clients report saving on average about 5 hours per week. Because they get these things automated. They get all that client chatter under control. They stop doing work that they're not getting paid to do.
Yeah.
It adds up.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, awesome. What a great interview today. I thank you so much. I think it was such an important conversation to have. And I also love that I'm able to point them into a resource that they can get help with. If they're listening to the episode and they're like, yes, that would be so dreamy. Oh my gosh, yes, I've known I've needed this. This has been on my project list. That there's either a first step that you can take with the free download, or you can talk to Melissa about her done for you services. All right, Melissa, thank you so much for being here today. You've been such a delight and a wealth of information. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Absolutely. Wasn't this a great conversation about creating standards with our clients? As business owners, we want to deliver exceptional service. We want to be of value. And that relationship between you and your clients can become very intimate. And I love the idea of setting these boundaries ahead of time and being clear about them for yourself so that you can, with integrity and clarity, communicate those to your clients. Clients may or may not continue to push those boundaries. In fact, I can almost guarantee you are going to have clients that will continue to push boundaries. But if you do this work and you really think about what are your standards and what are you willing to, hold your ground on, I think that it makes it so much easier to make decisions in those moments of whether you're going to continue to work with your clients or not. Because at the end of the day, we have that choice as business owners. We have that choice whether we want to continue that relationship because it serves us. But I want to offer you this thought. If you're continually stressed out and you find that you have a client that is abusing those boundaries and it's at the expense of your well-being and your stress and your thoughts about enjoying your business, then I would encourage you to draw those boundaries, hold firm to them. Because it's not just the time that you'll get back, it's going to be the energy that you can reallocate towards other things in your business that may very well propel you towards reaching those goals. And right now you may feel really, really stuck in those relationships. Now, we all have clients that we absolutely love, and we've all experienced clients that are not ideal. And so I would really, really, really love for you to leave this conversation and leave this interview thinking about what does that look like for you? Because I know that you went into business because you had a dream of what that would look like. And if that is currently not in alignment with what your dream was because you have a client that is continually pushing boundaries, change that today. Now, I know you have lots of choices about how you can be investing your time. And I got to tell you, I truly appreciate you investing your time with me each and every week. There's a lot out there, my friends, and you are showing me that this has been providing you value. And I thank you so much. Thank you for listening every week. Thank you for sharing the episodes with your friends. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I want to know, have you listened to, maybe this is your first episode, maybe it's your 3rd, your 10th, your 30th episode. And I bet you're continuing to listen because when you listen to these episodes, you're like, yes, and you're shaking your head, yes, yes. If you're having difficulty seeing the results from what you're learning on these episodes, chances are it's because you're not executing. And that's okay because listen, there's no judgment, there's no shame in it. In fact, that is exactly why I'm here. I am here to come alongside you and help you execute on these strategies, execute on these ideas that will make a big impact in your business and in your life. So if you're thinking that you need to execute, I'm going to tell you that happens to be where the magic happens. And so whether you're looking for one-on-one support or a group support, I would invite you to complete an application over at theproductivityspecialist.com/call and apply, get on my calendar. Let's have a chat and talk about what your goals are and what it would be like working with me. And if there's an alignment and I can be of service to you, we'll talk about next steps. But I would really, really like the opportunity to talk to you about how I can support you in executing by working with me. That's my straight talk for you today. And until next time, have a productive week.